Listen.
Is anyone watching tennis?
No.
Oh, Nadal just lost.
Who lost?
Nadal.
Nadal.
On the first match.
Oh, he's getting too old now.
But it was Roland Garros, French Open. It was his playground, and he was lost for the first match. Very disappointing day.
Oh dear.
Oh.
He'll be back for Wimbledon, though.
Yeah. Hopefully, he doesn't get hurt in between.
I think Tim Murray's playing, isn't he?
He played yesterday and he lost. So it was yesterday I was disappointed, and again today disappointed.
That's the old guard. They're going now.
Oh, Ludo and Rafael.
Just sent off the connection for someone. So we'll begin. Just a minute. Let me let someone else in. Screen. Is anyone able to give an outline of object-oriented ontology, and particularly Graham Harman? Has anyone got a view of what the move consists of? It's quite a significant move in philosophy.
I could give it a go, if you like. He is calling for a kind of flat, what he calls a flat ontology, where he considers everything to be objects. So he rejects the correlationist idea. Correlationist idea that the human is always a subject. It has a very strong, the OOO has a strong relationship to his critique of Heidegger's tool analysis, and he has, in considering everything objects, he has a fourfold structure that he He thinks that he breaks objects down into real objects and sensual objects with real qualities and sensual qualities. And I think the main idea is that there is a withdrawn essence that is kind of unknowable, that is not cannot be kind of communicated with in exchange, and therefore isn't lost or affected by object interactions.
And could you say something about undermining and overmining?
Yeah, so I got a bit confused about undermining and overmining, but I listened to him a lot today, and he talks about it a lot. I think it's obviously one of the most fundamental parts of his thing.
So undermining is almost like the atomic makeup of an object, and overmining is to do with like the ideas which pertain to an object, systems and the methods. He rejects both accounts of the object through undermining and overmining. He comes up with a notion of dual mining. But he originally came up with the term object-orientated philosophy, which was revised to be object-orientated ontology later. I think the best thing to do is let's just read. So Samuel, if you could read the first 20.
Yeah. 1. An object is any unified entity, whether it has reality in the world or only in the mind. Philosophy must be broad enough to deal with both types of object. 2. Let the first be called a real object or a thing. Real objects are autonomous forces in the world, existing even if all observers sleep or die. 3. The second kind be called a sensual object or an image. Sensual objects exist only insofar as some perceiver is occupied with them. These perceivers need not be human. Sorry, I can't see the top of the...
Let me just shift it. Can you see now?
No, it's yeah, I can just see 5. I can't see 4.
I can't see 4 either.
Yeah, so I think you have to... 4. What we encounter is not reality itself. Our perception of things and our practical handling of them does not exhaust the reality of things. Each thing is an inexhaustible surplus. 5. This is not some quirk of the human or animal mind. Inanimate objects also fail to exhaust each other. Fire burning cotton or rock smashing windows oversimplify their victims too. 6. Heidegger saw this irreducibility of objects to any form of presence, to the mind or the hand. His mistake was to see this as resulting from a holistic tool network. 7. All forms of relation are guilty of reducing things to caricatures. Perception and praxis reduce them to their existence for me, causal relations to what they are for each other. 8. For this reason, Heidegger's network of equipment is no escape from presence. He should have seen this, since his tools can break, meaning that something in them can cause surprise. 9. Aristotle saw something of this. He tells us that his primary substance or individual things cannot be defined, since definitions are always made of universals, but things are not. 10. Leibniz also deserves mention, since his windowless monads resemble our inexhaustible objects. But like Aristotle, he was too skeptical about the reality of compound objects such as corporations or machines. 11. The fact that objects withdraw from each other makes us ask how they interact at all. If fire only encounters a caricature of cotton, how does it burn that cotton? 12. The occasionalist philosophers asked the same question. Some of the Muslim theologians said that God is the only causal agent, as did Malebranche in France and others of his era. 13. We must reject this conclusion, not because God is a laughingstock amongst mainstream Western intellectuals, but because no specific entity at all should be given a monopoly on causal relations. 14. Hume and Kant are equally guilty of monopoly, placing all causation in the customary conjunctions of habit, Hume, or the categories of the mind, Kant. Nobody laughs, though they should. 15. The objects unexhausted by all contact are the ones we call real objects or things. If all objects were real, there would be no relations. Not even God could help. 16. Real objects are units, but not empty poles of unity, since this would make all things identical, Leibniz. Things also have qualities that belong to them while differing from them. 17. This strife between real things and qualities is called essence. The word has a bad reputation due to arrogant claims that essence is knowable, but essence is never directly knowable. 18. Each thing has an essence. A chair is what it is, deeper than all the events and surface effects through which it is manifest. Say otherwise makes change impossible. 19. If there were nothing but real objects and real qualities, there would be no experience and no causal relations at all. Everything would withdraw into private seclusion, devoid of contact. 20. The world of experience has been described by phenomenology as the intentional realm, but this term is often used confusingly in opposite ways and is also boring and sterile.
Thank you. Any points, anything which can be picked up on at this point? Does everyone follow?
I thought the way it was written was very interesting, that it was numbered. And I mean, I thought the layout was really interesting. That's what got to me, first of all. The way he was trying to find the third table. And I thought it was a justification to talk about what is a piece of artwork, because towards the end, by 72, you're thinking he's trying to justify this essence of an artwork, I thought. So he went through all this, like 70 things, and then he talked about this special feeling that an artwork has, that makes it different from an object. That's what I thought. But I like the layout, I like the numbering.
I mean, it derives from
Litz or something.
more like very close to Wittgenstein from Tractatus. So it's got a history. So it's meant to carry through a sort of logical set of propositions about objects and things. Anyone want to discuss any given section?
I hope to hear a little bit more from number 11. I thought number 11, the fact that objects withdraw, blah blah blah. It sounds like object interact. They make interaction each other, like human interact with object. I thought it's interesting point of view.
So this derives from Heidegger, who talks about offering and withdrawal as a sort of dynamic in relationship to objects. So as much as being an offering, they also withdraw. So it makes the object unknowable in its entirety. It's not knowable. It's not a knowable thing, entity.
Is the fire burning cotton? Is that an example of vicarious causation, or not?
Is to demonstrate that objects relate to objects without human interference or human interaction.
But without revealing their essence or affecting their essence.
Without having to reveal anything at all.
Yeah. So when he talks about vicarious causation, what kind of interaction is that he's talking about? Like, what is a mediator that is not either of the objects?
I mean, it's just in the encounter of objects with objects, things happen. So it's to do with causality. So it doesn't explain itself. So how does it burn that cotton?
And when he says the fire only encounters a caricature of cotton, is the caricature of cotton the sensual object of cotton?
I presume so. But we're wrong. I mean, it goes back to the subjective turning philosophy. The subjective turning philosophy, mainly attributed to Descartes, to Kant, is that the world is knowable through the subject is the mediator of knowledge of the world. The world is a knowable object through the power of the subject to interact with it, encounter it. So all knowability is subjectively mediated. Lester's here. We'd like to read the next 20.
Can I just say one thing about the first 20 that we've looked at, and I suppose I completely agree with what Chad said about the sort of the form and the style is very interesting, and what's been spoken about in terms of the caricature, these sort of reductive diagrams or schemas that we overlay reality in order to try and understand them. But I thought there was a kind of an interesting moment, and I'm afraid I can't remember which number it was, but it's one of the ones we've just listened to, where he says no authority can have a monopoly of causative power, and he sort of uses that to, well, it's sort of stated as a claim. And initially he says...
it's number 13.
Number 13. I wonder if that's been sort of chosen, number 13, that's sort of the ominous number, because he sort of mentions, we can't ascribe it to God because, not just because God's a laughingstock, but because no individual authority can have a monopoly on causation. And then he uses that same claim to state, I think, that both Hume and Kant are wrong in different ways for stating a sort of singularity of almost sort of power in the world. And I was sort of thinking of Spinoza at that point, who people may know sort of had an idea of sort of a kind of a spirit that seems to sort of motivate the universe, and then Hegel as well, this sort of notion of spirit. And I suppose I definitely see that similarity with Wittgenstein's sort of style and sort of project. But I feel that there's something, that the thing I sort of find really beautiful about Wittgenstein is that the argument is kind of solipsistic in itself. Wittgenstein creates a set of definitions of his own, and then he sort of creates an argument out of it. And there's a similarity in this piece in that there's a real beauty to this sort of lattice of 4 or 10 bonds, sort of 4 initial bonds, and I can't remember, sort of 3 emanations or radiations and 3 sort of conjunctions. There's an incredible sort of almost mathematical beauty to it, but it's a mathematical beauty built on these claims which are almost sort of whimsical or kind of funny. So, we don't agree with the monopoly of individual authority, and those sorts of claims, when those are made in this argument, not just almost, I feel that they're sort of ethical, almost political statements, which are just emerging from the author's mind, rather than the argument as it's been presented to us. And maybe that's sort of part of the sort of the aesthetic project of it, that there's stuff going on in Graham Harman's mind that we can't see, and so we just sort of see one kind of property of it. But there was statements where there are these huge claims made, quite huge metaphysical claims, such as we cannot agree that all causation originates from a single source. The question might be sort of, well, why? I mean, many philosophers have, but that's it's a claim which is just left there, which I thought was kind of just an interesting part of the argument. And there were I felt there were a few of those made, including this distinction between real and sensual. Why does there need to be? Why do there need to be real? A reality that we cannot see. It may well be the case, and there's a sort of an idealist philosophical tradition, but there's a kind of dogmatism to it, which I found kind of interesting. But I just wanted to.
He takes the Kantian subjective turn and produces a schema which is opposed to it. So he follows a logic.
Mm-hmm.
It's a logic based on the first predication, which is the predication of Kant, and then builds in a negation of that, a case of that. And so it might not go deep enough into Kant. It's a refutation of Kant.
I mean, it may well be that I completely put my hands up and say I haven't been deep enough into Kant myself, but I definitely sort of saw an interesting paradox. I don't know if this is part of the refutation, which struck me as Wittgensteinian, the rejection, or not the rejection, but the claim of the limited capacity for knowing of an invariably reductive way of approaching the world or understanding it, written within a document which is overtly limited. I think he limited each point to 30 words maximum, and had intended that the most number of statements that could be made was 99, I think, or something. So there's almost that sort of Wittgensteinian paradox that he's sort of saying, I am using limited language to prove the limited nature of knowledge, or something like that. But I know more about Wittgenstein than I do about Kant, so...
Well, isn't it written in a little bit like Spinoza's ethics in that sense, in some geometrical style? Maybe it's after that. I thought this playing with realism, and I guess he calls it speculative realism, is quite interesting. The way he draws on Husserl It doesn't quite go all the way, and the way he rejects Kant, and his reference to essence, which is really normally at odds with realism, and is more in the role of idealism, but he's using Husserl to kind of unravel that a little bit. He's also referring to Hume, I think. Hume would be not talking about causality, he's more talking about correlation, which I think is another term that Harman used. Correlationism, I think I've read somewhere. So I'm not
the relation between knowledge and being, isn't it?
Yeah. So I mean, I think if Deleuze were here, he'd be complaining that some of that attack on Hume is unfair, and that the reference to essence is a step backwards. But I don't know. Maybe we should carry on. Yeah, I mean, there's also this who should know, right? I mean, he also referenced Leibniz, and basically this, and God, and really he's basically removing all the hierarchies that all of these philosophers place, where they ever place God or the human at the center of knowledge, the center of understanding. If he reduces it to I don't know, random objects, all objects, right, and puts them all on the same level, then it's a quite radically different view of the world. If there's no hierarchy, which is what he's trying to do.
Who's going to read the next 20?
Can't see.
Any takers?
Okay.
I can do it again if you like.
Go on.
21. We will speak instead of sensual objects and sensual qualities. A mailbox, zebra, or cylinder can be seen from numerous angles and distances while still remaining the same object. 22. Unlike real objects and qualities, sensual objects and qualities do not withdraw from access. Experience is full of them. We are sincerely occupied with diamonds, radio towers, and Spanish guitars. 23. The Polish philosopher Kazimierz Twardowski distinguished between objects outside experience and content inside experience, but Husserl imploded both object and content into experience, making their dual internal to consciousness. 24. The downside of phenomenology is its idealism, but the beauty of the movement is its awareness that experience is made of sensual objects in tension with their sensual qualities. 25. This tension is what we mean by the experience of time. Sunlight moves across the beach, and the boy and girl grow old. Waves augment or erode the beach. 26. We experience time because sensual objects remain relatively stable from moment to moment. Differing sensual qualities flicker across their surfaces, preceding them rather than made from bundles of them. 27. But the sensual object also has qualities that do not flicker and vary as sensual qualities do. The sensual mailbox, zebra, and cylinder have certain invariant qualities for experience. 28. The process of discovering these invariant qualities is what Husserl calls eidetic reduction. Thus we can use the term eidos for the tension between sensual objects and their real qualities. 29. These real qualities...
Just stop for a moment. Eidos. Has anyone got a definition of eidos? It's a term which goes back to the Greeks, to Aristotle and Plato. What's eidos?
I'm just guessing here, Jonathan, but would it be a return to the senses?
I think it's form, or it's close to the idea of form. But just take a note of it, check it out in the Philosophical Dictionary. It's one of the 4 aspects of what he discusses. Continue.
But doesn't he use it to describe the withdrawn essence? Or no? Sorry.
I'll just check it out. Just a minute. Form, essence, type, species. See Plato's theory of form and Aristotle's theory of universals. Eidos.
Form,
It's just
essence, type, species. Form, essence, type, species.
So it's form, essence, type, or species. Continue.
These real qualities of sensual objects can never be directly encountered, just as the real qualities of real objects, essence, can never come to view. We know them indirectly, elusively. 30. Phenomenology overlooks this point, since it's too committed to the direct presence of all reality to consciousness. Heidegger freed phenomenology from this dogma of direct contact with the real. 31. We have not yet spoken of the 4th and final tension between real objects and their sensual qualities, but this is the easiest of all, since Heidegger discussed it clearly. 32. The hammer in its action, or the covered rail platform protecting us from the rain, are deeper than any theoretical or practical access to them. They are real, not sensual. 33. When the hammer breaks, shatters, or malfunctions, sensual qualities are reassigned from the sensual hammer to an unknown yet real hammer, deeper than the one we thought we knew. 34. We were in contact with the sensual hammer, but the real hammer lies at a distance. This tension between the real hammer and its sensual qualities can be called space. 35. Clarke and Leibniz, 1715 to 1716, argued over whether space is an empty container for entities or is produced by relations between them. Both were incorrect. Space is relational and non-relational. 36. Distant stars are not directly before us, but a number of light years away, yet they are close to us as something we know about and as possible destinations. 37. Space is the tension between the accessibility of things at any distance and the deeper core of their reality that can never be approached or exhausted. 38. We now summarize all 4 tensions once more to keep them firmly before the mind in the discussion that follows. They're among the keys to object-oriented philosophy. 39. Time is the fissure between sensual objects and their swirling and vacillating sensual qualities. 40. Space is the duel between these sensual qualities and the mysterious real objects that signal from somewhere beneath them, often in case of surprise and disruption. Shall I continue? Yeah. Essence is the
Continue.
Essence is the strife between the concealed real objects and the concealed real qualities that make them what they are. This tension lacks any foothold in experience and happens elsewhere. Eidos is the gulf between the sensual objects of experience and the real qualities that make such objects what they are, beyond all vacillating flux of surface qualities. 43. Instead of constant pairing of time and space as peerless queens, we add their neglected sisters to a new quadruple dynasty of time, space, essence, and eidos. These are the four tensions between the two kinds of objects and two kinds of qualities. But we might also ask about objects meeting objects and qualities paired with qualities. 45. Qualities are always attached to objects, radiating from them as from a living heart. For this reason, we give the name radiations to the way in which qualities belong together. 46. When sensual qualities radiate from sensual objects, we will speak of emanation. The orange is not a bundle of flavors, textures, and aromas. Instead, these qualities emanate from the orange. 47. As for the numerous real qualities that belong to the orange, we will speak of contraction, since the multiple real qualities of an object are initially compressed together, not articulated. 48. And insofar as both real and sensual qualities belong to the same sensual orange, we speak of duplicity. The object conceals its true features behind a carnival of swirling qualities. 49. We have spoken of tensions in the case of objects and qualities, and radiations as the way that qualities come together. Between objects and objects, we will speak of junctions. 50. The relation between real objects is one of withdrawal or mutual seclusion. Real objects make no contact and require some sort of indirect or vicarious link. 51. The relation between a real object and a sensual object is one of involvement, as when a real observer is concerned with the sensual temple, orange or blackbird. 52. For a real object, numerous sensual objects are simultaneously present. I live not amidst a single orange, but groves of orange trees. These multiple sensual objects are contiguous. 53. To summarize, the four tensions are time, space, essence, and eidos. The three radiations are emanation, contraction, and duplicity. And the three junctions are withdrawal, involvement, and contiguity.
We'll stop there. Any observations, any points, any arguments?
So in 43, what he says is if time, space, and essence and eidos, he's differentiating. Like, so essence, as we saw in eidos, is almost, it is the meaning or definition is one of the definitions is essence. So this is where I'm a little confused.
I mean, he uses language in a way which is elastic.
Mm-hmm.
The way that I sort of thought he meant was that that eidos was the relationship between the withdrawn essence. I mean, the relationship between the essence and the central qualities through its withdrawal. So it's the withdrawal being the connection between the two the two things that is eidos. I mean, that's what I thought.
And it takes that idea of a quadruple dynasty very much from Heidegger's fourfold.
Jonathan, I was just in relation to that. It's interesting the language that Harman uses in terms of strife, tension, fissure, talking about burning cotton or smashing glass, objects withdrawing, duplicity, the limits almost of empathy. Is that language also reminiscent of Heidegger? I don't know. Or is that something that there's a sort of a kind of a, you know, I appreciate sort of the Marxist tradition as one of kind of tension and conflict and emergent realities, but there seem to be quite a present violence in Harman's language, and I was wondering if that was something which is also evident in Heidegger's language, for example, in terms of the fourfold.
I think Heidegger draws from pre-Socratic philosophy. Some of that language is poetics rather than strictly speaking philosophy. He draws upon the poetic language which he first comes across with the pre-Socratics, but then with the poetry of poets like Hölderlin and Rilke. You also find the idea of the broken tool in Blanchot. This movement from it being sort of almost imaginary object to becoming real, becoming concrete through its damage. This is in Blanchot, which I think he takes from Heidegger's Being in Time. In Being in Time, there's the reference to the broken tool. And this is picked up by the book Tool Being, which is the basis of a PhD by Harman, which is in the library in Royal College. So you get interesting lineages with these words. Another origin of these fragments is in Jaina Romanticism. They often wrote in aphorisms, numbered aphorisms. Shall we move on? Any new reader? I'll read 6. I'll read from 54. 54. These are the 10 basic bonds between objects and qualities. Through their formation and destruction, the story of the world unfolds. The universe is crossed by fault lines, wrecked and with tremors. 55. For each of these 10 kinds of bond, there is a specific way that the bond becomes evident and specific effects belonging to each of these cases. 56. We focus for now solely on the disturbance in the four tensions, in which the real and sensual qualities is paired with the real or sensual qualities. 57. Any sensual object, whether tree, candle, or dog, cannot exist without being both real and sensual qualities simultaneously, shrouded in extraneous detail and possessing deeper real qualities as well. 58. Hence the disturbance in the bond between sensual objects and its real or sensual qualities can occur only by splitting the bond that already exists, a kind of fission. 59. The difference between sensual objects and their sensual qualities become openly evident. We cannot speak of simulation, since we thereby simulate how a sensual object might generate different effects. 60. When the gap lies instead between sensual objects and their real qualities, we speak of theory, since all thoughts aim at approaching the real properties of sensual objects.
Gap instead
Would
between
you like to read the last?
when the gap
I can read.
when the gap lies between sensual object and the
61. Any real object withdrawing from all access and all relation must have a certain internal consistency, but not distinctly separable qualities that exist in tension with it. 62. Thus, instead of breaking a pre-existent bond between any object and its qualities, we must produce a tension that did not pre-exist its production. We can call this process fusion. 63. When this occurs between a withdrawn real object and its sensual qualities, we can speak of allure, since there is something elusive about the way the object signals to us. 64. But when real objects are fused with real qualities allied with it for the first time, we can speak of causation, since this is where consequences unfold for the world. 65. To summarize, the disturbances of the four tensions in the world have been named simulation, theory, allure, and causation. 66. All of the arts are a way of producing allure, but there are other ways as well. We should describe what makes artworks different from other kinds of allure. 67. All forms of allure come to our attention through surprise or fascination, since we are not entirely sure what we are dealing with, though we witness its qualities. 68. With Heidegger's famous broken hammer, it is not the hammer itself that becomes visible. Instead, the hammer's qualities are assigned to the hammer as to some unknown letter X. 69. The fascination of beauty in all its forms is that of some deeper animating principle beyond any particular visible features. Hence, rules cannot be given of making beautiful things. 70. In courage, we see allegiance to one's self and its principles. External consequences be damned. The courageous person views safety, career, and popularity as inessential. The coward does the opposite. 71. In pleasant surprises, we encounter some unexpected lively principle in a book, person, or city from which we have had expected only serviceable mediocrity. In disappointment, the opposite occurs. 72. This happens in artworks as well. Though we cannot identify artworks with the form of allure known as beauty, sunsets, bird plumage, and seductive voices are beautiful without being artworks. 73. And furthermore, there might be genuine artworks lacking in what is usually called beauty. In Duchamp's bicycle wheel is not an artwork. Lack of beauty is probably not the reason. 74. Heidegger speaks of strife in his lecture, the origin of the work of art. This strife must be a special case in the world, or everything would be an artwork. 75. His strife occurs between earth and world, but although his earth is concealed, it is not what we mean by real objects, because Heidegger's earth is a single global lump. 76. What we need to discover is how strife differs from normal situations, and how the strife in the artwork differs from that of the broken hammer, courage, and so forth.
Thank you. Is there any commentary?
Yeah, I thought the last 10 were 66 to 76. It was really getting to the point, and I sort of agreed with him on the allure part and the strife, the special cases, and that's, as artists you're trying to get that allure. But then he compares it to he says, a piece of artwork doesn't have to be beauty, because a sink can be beautiful. Not beautiful, but it could be an artwork. So what is this thing that allures us to it? But a piece of artwork is not just an object. And I like that. I thought the last 10 are really clever.
There's this point of the hammer breaking, and he's mentioned something about it, which it went above me, because I think there must be some sort of a tie-up with Heidegger, or who has mentioned the hammer somewhere.
As in Being in Time.
Sorry?
In Being in Time, he talks about the broken hammer.
Yeah, okay.
And Blanchot later on takes the same argument and slightly gives it a different nuance to Heidegger.
Mm.
It's first of all Being in Time. It's only a short reference, but a very important one.
I like to speak something shortly about number 60. I quite like number 60. 60. When the gap lies instead between sensual objects, that part, I interpret that one as when the gap happens between our body and mind. We speak of God. I interpret it as that, and I liked that idea.
Has anyone thought about the difference between writing an essay, which would be around the same ideas, and this way of writing?
Well, I think this way of writing is lovely. I really like it. I would find writing an essay really difficult. I find it really like a beginning, middle, end. But this sort of is an essay, but I like the rules, 30 words, and but it's so packed with information, and I like it. I love it. But when you're dyslexic, you love this sort of thing. It's really good.
It helps contain oneself also, I feel, with such rules. Then you don't just go overboard on one particular topic. So, which was very interesting. And I found it like easier to understand somehow. I don't know why. Yeah.
And scientific, it felt more scientific the way it was laid out. It was almost like it was using sort of language from physics when he was talking about fission and fusion. So I felt it was almost like an experiment. But I don't know if artists are, when they make something, are they consciously making something with an allure, or for it to work, does it have to have an allure? Or does that just come, or are we putting an allure into it? Because some artists' stuff, that people will buy it because it has that energy about it, that allure about it. People pay money.
67. All forms of allure comes to our attention through surprise and fascination.
Yeah, so it's like Vermeer's or something, at the time it wasn't, and as you're talking about it now, there's like an allure about it, there's a fascination about his paintings. But I don't know, I mean, this is, I thought the last 10 are really interesting.
And he says, since we're not entirely sure of what we're dealing with.
Yeah.
So
The one about Heidegger 68. Heidegger's reference to the tool as the kind of the verb of the object rather than the being of the object. I think Harman's using it in a different way, is reinterpreting Heidegger's approach to get to what the spirit of the object is. And this letter X is kind of a reference to the object equals X that comes from Kant, right? It's how you get to the unknown object. And he's doing it via reinterpreting Heidegger's famous idea of the tool. That's what I think is going on. I think Harman wrote a book about that.
yes, he did a PhD called Tool Being in Heidegger.
Yeah, I think there was a reference in an interview that I read that he was referring to Tool a bit from Tool Being, where he said that in contrary to where Heidegger says that the hammer appears when it breaks or when it loses its function, he was saying that in the hands of a skilled labourer, the real qualities of the hammer are always there. They're always present. It doesn't disappear in its use. So he kind of thought that there was something a little bit more complicated than a tool basically becoming an extension of the body and disappearing whilst it was being used and only appearing when it lost that function.
Yeah, this unknown letter X, I think, is a reference to kind of another way. It's using the tool as somehow as a schema of the object. in OO, whatever it's called.
Just to come back to, I think it was Chud maybe who originally was talking about the word allure and in relation to artworks. Maybe it was just because we mentioned it, I think last week, Walter Benjamin's The Work of Art in the Age of Mechanical Reproduction. But I sort of felt there was a kind of, certainly a sonic resonance between allure and aura, but a sort of a different way of thinking through maybe what that sort of power was. Just to sort of think a bit more about, Chud, you're thinking about, allure and how it operates. But I felt there was something kind of interesting that at least overtly, I don't know if others agree, but this seemed to be quite a overtly apolitical text. I suppose there's a politics to an idea of distributed agency, so to speak. And I certainly felt there was a kind of politics to the language around sort of strife and violence. But whereas my understanding of sort of Benjamin's idea of aura is that it's something about the labour of the artist, allure seemed to be more about the reality of the object itself.
You also, in Hegel, the idea of the sensuous shining, the artwork. So you've got the sensuous shining, the allure, and the aura. So they each speak in different ways about equality. A meeting of light and matter, let's say.
Yeah, I think it has a lot to do with meeting an artist as well. It's nice to meet the artist because you get an aura from them. I know it sounds mad, but it's like when you meet them, they have an energy about them, and their work has an energy about them. And if you're drawn to somebody's work, you feel like you have to meet the artist, because, especially if you've been following them for years, because you want to know what their aura is like, or what they feel like, what their real true sense of them are like. And so they go together, I think. But if you think too much about making a piece of work with a allure and all that, I don't think it comes together. I think it's something that happens, isn't it? You can't fabricate one and say, I'm going to put this in and this in because that will have allure in it. Or, I don't know. What do you think?
You can't intend a law.
No. You can't. And yeah, because it's something else, isn't it? It's almost it's a magic, really.
It's like you don't know till the time it's done, like whatever work it might be. Like it has it or it doesn't have it.
Yes.
It just happens.
Yeah, I think you know when it hasn't got it.
Yeah.
because you just know, and you can't. You're not out to create it, but if it's not special, it just stands out. But you know when it's got something, because it speaks to you.
Mm.
But that it's an object, but it speaks to you, and that's quite weird.
That's so true.
Is the writing free of jargon?
thought of.
Well, isn't he doing what all philosophers do, inventing his own jargon? I mean, he's defined allure, he's defined fusion, he's defined fission, all these things are in there. He's just creating his own language. It's not free of jargon, and he's referring to other philosophers that he must, and their jargon. I don't think so. Maybe it's written in a way that's meant to be easily readable, I think, in some way, but I don't think it is easy to grasp what he's actually saying on the surface.
I think it's a language of images, particularly. You know, maybe in creating those images, you know, he's sort of suggesting a kind of different type of object.
Is he, I can't remember now, isn't he quite indebted to Plato? He kind of sense some Platonic stuff going on here, you know, like inability to, what's hidden behind the cave wall, not having access to it all, any of them, as opposed to, say, Aristotle or something. It seems to be playing. I can't remember. I read some stuff. It seems to be. It reminds me of Plato in some way. I mean, the language.
Any final points?
Why did he put that number when he said that in courage you have to be true to yourself? Why did he put that in? I think number 70.
Just to say one thing which was playing on my mind and may relate to that question. The author was, as I understand it, was teaching in the American University in Cairo, and this text was published, I think, at the end of 2011, if I'm not wrong. And this was during the revolution against Hosni Mubarak, the former military dictator. And you might remember the huge protests in Tahrir Square. And then the military essentially took over that revolution. And we're in the same situation now in terms of Egypt being run by former head of military intelligence. But I wonder whether some of that politics of that time of people making sacrifices and potentially standing up for notions, for essential objects like democracy or freedom, was on his mind as he was, maybe some of his students or something. I don't know, but that's definitely something that I was thinking about while reading the text.
Yes, it did seem, I understand it now, because suddenly, after talking about objects, he suddenly talks about standing up for things. Yeah. What was that revolution called?
I mean, it was called the Arab Spring by the West. I don't know what they call it in Egypt.
Yeah. That makes sense. Yeah, that understands all that strife business.
In the Heidegger's book on the work of art, talks about the artwork being the strife between earth and sky. What is the earth in Heidegger? What is the strife between earth and world? Earth and world is in fact not sky, earth and world.
Ah, that's funny.
Well, is that the place where you exist as a human being in between earth and world or earth and sky?
Earth and world is, I mean, in a way, earth is materiality and world is relations. Abstractions.
I mean, a lot of, I don't know, Renaissance art or whatever can be thought of in those terms, right? Because it's that play between the worldly and the unworldly, God and or the ideal and the real. I mean, in lots of paintings, there's two realms there. It's quite common in art. You can think of it in terms of abstract and not abstract as well. Form and formless.
What are the relations of Heidegger's fourfold? So earth and world is two. What is the other relation? So he refers to mortals and deities. Any last points? Someone wants to initiate a discussion. Okay.
Jonathan, could I just ask quickly, is there anything that you can think of in particular in being and time other than the tool analysis that might be useful to think about our relationship to technology?
I mean, he writes explicitly on technology in an essay in his collected writings. There's a very important essay on technology.
And that's in Being and Time, is it?
No, it's in his collected works. But it's explicitly on technology. But he says the essence of technology is untechnological or not technological.
Okay.
That's one of his most important essays. Who'd like to read?
I've only got my phone. I can't read anything because it's so small.
I'll tell you what we'll do, just go through it just very quickly. So the idea is to look at the diagram as an abstract device, picking out the idea of notebooks and sketchbooks as one form of diagram. A diagram of becoming, and a feeling of arena of potentiality in which images, language, signs and symbols become subject to schemas of otherness. The diagram also is an esoteric tradition that exhibits traits that are outside the notions pertaining to visual regimes of presence and emerged within modernity and supporting conditions of early abstraction. Also, the Eastern models of aesthetic presentation encode different forms of abstraction that likewise embrace relationships to the invisible and the etheric. Finally, we have the explicit Deleuzian philosophical construction of the diagrammatics, which is based on the disavowed representation. So Leonardo's notebooks contain inventions, observations of nature, optical insights, diagrams, principles of mechanics, architectural sketches, anatomy and meditations on weather patterns that mix empirical reflection with abstract laws that govern experience. So it's a different sort of space. It's not a perspectival space. It's not a single viewpoint, but an array of insights and points of view and reflections, diagrammatics, which link up different spheres of knowledge and vision. So everything is in fact open, but the openness that rests on no syntactical authority, demarking passage as opposed to final modes of synthesis. In Leonardo. The interior continent of the body is mapped out to reveal the working of the deep. So this is the first artists, Michelangelo, Leonardo, Raphael, to take corpses. Michelangelo was said to swap work for access to corpses. He's Dürer. So overlaying different relations of knowledge. So it's both a depiction machine and a knowledge machine, all tied together. Here's Dürer and sketches of animals. It's like he didn't see very many of these animals. Dürer explores a novel sense related to the organization of pictorial space composed of images, symbols, words, and signs. On one level, it anticipates collage as a mode of pictorial construction, and on the level of form towards excess. This is Melancholy from 1514.
Fantastic.
I mean, it's one of the greatest prints of the whole Renaissance.
Incredible.
I mean, it's staggering where he managed to generate a level of pictorial complexity together. different levels of depiction.
And he's managed to put a dog in there, curled up.
However, we approach Dura's engraving, whatever empirical literary method we use to observe, catalogue and describe its contents, we must cope with what this great German art historian Wolflin over a century ago called the chaos of objects, a visual disorder that beguiles, perplexes and perhaps even irritates a gloom-ridden space. This is Robert Flood, 16th, 17th century, so early Baroque. Flood is best known for his compilations of, occult philosophy. His celebrated exchange of views with Johannes Kepler concerning the scientific and hermetic approach to knowledge. This is Robert Flood again. Again, Robert Flood, 17th century. This is the anatomy of plants in a structure and function. So it coincides with the discovery of lenses. So amplification of almost on a atomic level. This is a top-category scroll from the Turmeric period, it's 15th century Islamic. As opposed to being an image within a given frame of time, there is instead an animation of a loop of time in which all actions pertaining to building work are drawn into a single visual sequence. This is Turmeric, 15th century, Iranian, Persian. This is Safavid period, early 17th century. Safavid period is Persian, equivalent Ottoman period in or the Mughal period. This is garden rug, so overview of space, which waters, flowering shrubs, animals, fish are all drawn together in free play of sensations. This is a 14th century Tibetan mandala. Mandalas function as cosmic diagrams in which different layers of reality are encoded into a single form. This is 18th century mandalas from Tibet. The Jain cosmological diagram of the world of mortals. This is the subtle body of the chakras, It's 19th century. It shows the inner workings of the etheric body. Early 19th century Zen drawing. The diagram constitutes one of the most distinctive discussions in Deleuze's idea of painting. The diagram is indeed a chaos and catastrophe, but it's also a germ of order and rhythm. It is a violent chaos in relation to the figurative givens, but it's a germ of rhythm in relationship to the new order of painting. The diagram is not a signifying system, rather it exhibits manual traits or confused sensations such as lines, zones, marks, color patches. The diagram confronts the presence of chaos and the prior sense of history in order that a new type of reality can be created or emerge. And in this respect, the diagram destroys the prior representational qualities of figuration. Diagrams are not simply confined to artistic or aesthetic realms, but also ontological because it embodies the will to art. The essential thing about the diagram is that it's made in order for something to emerge from it, and if nothing emerges from it, it fails. Theosophy was founded in the United States in the late 19th century. It was mainly guided by Madame Blavatsky's writings, which formed on the basis of Neoplatonism, occultism, and esoteric trends within Christianity and Indian religions such as Hinduism and Buddhism. Following from this, it cultivated a belief that the ancient secret brotherhood known as Mahatmas had special powers. Overall, Theosophy teaches the universe can be perceived as an outward reflection from the absolute. Here's the thought forms by Besant and Leadbeater, which had a profound impact on particularly Kandinsky. Is Ilmarov Klimt, who predated Kandinsky by a number of years to produce the first abstract painting. It was in 1907. It's a piece of art historical revisionism now that they have to rewrite history based on the discovery of her entire output, which was fortunately saved. Of Klimt's notebook encodes this. Notebooks develop the symbolic system encoded in her work, and in turn offer a codex to the system that form a coherence to the whole. Klimt met Rudolf Steiner in 1908, and this was resulting in a far more systematic approach within her paintings, often materialized in the form of cycles of work. 1920. This is a new head of painting. The diagram maps the real yet to come by capturing and bringing into relationship traits that not yet mean anything, that signal their matter alone and capture what is most alive in sensations. At once a map of sensation, a map of difference, a map of relations, it reminds us of the nature of aesthetics as transformational, dimension by which things become other than what they are. Jesus Kandinsky, lend your ears to music, open your eyes to painting, and stop thinking. Just ask yourself whether the work has enabled you to walk about into an hitherto unknown world. If the answer is yes, what more do you want? It's 1912. 1925. Relationship to the Bauhaus. Or the impact of the Bauhaus on his idea of abstraction. The diagram marks the moment when the abstraction becomes real, the moment when abstraction of material traits is made into new reality. Kazim Malevich from 2015. From 1915, sorry. Prunbein, Helozitsky. Rudchenko. This is a large glass with a green book. Carbian. These are Paul Klee's notebooks from the Bauhaus years. Rudolf Steiner recorded his views of the world in numerous books. He gave more than 5,000 lectures in which he explained his ideas using only minimal notes. When describing especially difficult subjects, Steiner frequently resorted to illustrating what he was saying with coloured chalk on a blackboard. After his early lectures, his drawings were erased and lost. After the autumn of 1919, however, thick black paper was used to cover the blackboard so that the drawings could be rolled up and saved. Rudolf Steiner dream these things? Did he dream them as they once occurred at the beginning of time? They are for sure far more astonishing than the demons and serpents and bulls found in other cosmologies. Borges. These are the drawings which have a profound influence on both Joseph Beuys and Cy Tomlin. Emma Kuntz lived in Sweden and never exhibited in her lifetime. She was a healer who employed a pendulum as a primary means of reading the etheric starting point of illness. The Artaud notebooks. Artaud's writing becomes a suspension of the present. Like a notebook, it is a blueprint for an apocalyptic form of expression of the yet to materialize, or to use the expression that recharacterizes the work, is always not yet. Joseph Cornell's vitrines. Rauschenberg was insisted upon a model of art that was not yet involved with what might be called the cognitive moment, as in single image painting, but instead was tied to jewelry, to it's like memory, reflection, narration, proposition. Rosenkrantz speaking of Rauschenberg. Skip that.
Oh no.
And fiction. He was influenced by Leonardo, notebooks and drawings, where the artist drew in order to learn. Tom Lee again. Joseph Beuys and his blackboards. Joseph Beuys' blackboard drawings. He's giving a lecture. He often went on for hours, 3 hours at a time. He spoke non-stop. One's mind and the earth are in constant state of erosion. Mental rivers wear away the abstract banks. Brain waves undermine cliffs of thought. Ideas decompose into stone of unknowing, and conceptual crystallization break apart into deposits of gritty reason. America's postpartum document. Mara Mertz. Derrida stressed the idea that text might be composed of hinges, breaks, crevices, which imply probing the text below its surface. This implies that texts have an underside in which networks of sense are formed in ways that intersect the surface of the text. Bill Woodrow, car door, hiding board, twin top, and North American Indian headdress. Got our history of cinema. an expression of light, she